All right, let's talk about mutual fund fees. So, all mutual fund fees are going to have what's called an investment management fee. This fee can range anywhere from 20 basis points, so that would be 1/5 of 1%, all the way up to 3% of, uh, of portfolio value. There's also things called 12b1 fees. This is an annual fee that's paid as an operational expense, which the fund manager uses for distribution costs. Um, they can be as high as 75 basis points, but typically a 12b1 fee is 25 basis points. So we can have loaded shares. So a front-ended load says that if you invest $100, a typical load might be 5%. There's a 5% front-ended load. That means that upfront, whenever you give that $100, they're going to keep $5, and $95 will be what you have to invest in the fund. Back-ended load is similar. If you are withdrawing your funds from a mutual fund, a back-end, let's say there's a 5% back-ended fee, you're pulling out $100, the company's going to take $5 of that money on the way out, and you're going to be left with $95. Um, so, just as kind of a breakdown, there are management fees paid out of fund assets to the fund's investment advisor. There's distribution fees. These are paid out of the fund's assets to cover distribution expenses. There's other expenses, for example, legal and accounting expenses. Then there's total annual fund operating expenses. So what I want you to take from this is that paying attention to the fees that you're paying inside of a fund are very important. And so let's jump over here and kind of work an example here so that you can see just how quickly fees can eat into your returns. So example, investor invests $10,000 into a fund that has a front-ended load of 5% and a management fee of 1.5% total assets. What is the investment's total return in 2 years if the investment returns 6% in year in the year? Uh, Year one has been filled out for you. Fill out year two. So we're going to start with that $10,000 that we invest. Then there's going to be a 5% front-ended load. So all of a sudden, we're left with our net investment of $9,500. That $9,500 is able to produce a 6% return. So it makes us $570. We have a total asset value of $10,070. But now we're going to need to pay our operating expenses of 1.5% of that $10,070. And we're going to be left with an ending value of $9,918.95. If we take that $9,918.95 and we divide that by our initial investment of $10,000, we get a negative 0.81% return in year one. So that's pretty different from a 6% return. For year two, it's going to be similar, except we're not going to be paying our load, our front-ended load. Um, but I'll let you guys fill out year two. Um, so as you can tell, these can really eat into your returns and are important to be paying attention to. Mutual funds and taxes. So every time you buy and sell underlying security inside of a fund, there is going to be a capital gains tax that is triggered. Um, so inside of a mutual fund, the investor does not control the timing of the security investments. So high portfolio turnover, a lot of buying and selling inside of that portfolio is going to create a lot of capital gains taxes that are going to have to be paid every year. So portfolio turnover is measures the percentage of the portfolio that is replaced each year. So let's see, let's use this example here. A small cap mutual fund has $1 million in assets. Sean Johnson, the small cap fund manager, notices that insiders are selling TCF and buying MATX. Sean decides to follow the insiders and sells 2,000 shares of TCF for $100 and uses the proceeds to purchase MATX. What is the portfolio turnover rate? So portfolio turnover rate is 2,000 shares times 100 divided by our total assets of $1 million. And that will give us our percentage portfolio turnover. The same small cap fund had purchased the original TCF shares for a cost basis of $50. How much would the investor have to pay in taxes at the end of the year, assuming a 20% capital gains rate? Well, for this answer, we sold it for $100. We paid $50. That means capital gains taxes for $50. So it equals what we sold the shares for minus what we paid for the shares times the number of shares, which is 2,000, and we can get our answer here. Let me grab my calculator. We're going to take 2,000 times 50 equals, so there's $100,000 gain. And now our capital gains tax equals our $100,000 of gains. Oops, put one too many zeros there, times our 20% capital gains rate. Right, so that would be $20,000, right? So a big difference between mutual funds and ETFs is that with ETFs, you're not necessarily buying the underlying securities, you're buying the fund. And so whenever there are purchases and sales underlying in the ETF, you will not trigger a taxable event. You'll only be taxed on the distributions. Whereas a mutual fund, every time a mutual fund buys and sells, there will be a tax consequence. And so you can scroll through. I have a couple slides here about ETFs and mutual funds and tax efficiency that you should go back through and review. All right, that's all for this one. We'll see you guys in the next video.